Okay guys, so I just want to do a quick video on dealing with what I struggled with my GMC. Now I'm on an express van, so things are in a little bit different spot, but this is going to be a lot the same on the different Chevy, GMC, and maybe other vehicles too. The rig started dying. You can hear it's running now, but earlier today we're getting off the off-ramp, I'm with the family, and it just dies. I start it up again, I go, it dies again. I start it up, I get it to a parking lot, it dies again, and it starts throwing security system check codes, Stabilitrak codes, not codes, but the lights on the dash. There wasn't actually a code for it. Codes for traction control, all this stuff, right? So I sit there, I call mechanics, I call diesel mechanics, I call the dealer, and they're like, yeah, that you know, the security system shouldn't kill the engine. And I start digging around forums for the Stabilitrak, and should that kill the engine? But really, that shouldn't kill the engine either. And I'd actually started seeing this Stabilitrak code a couple of days ago, but I didn't think much of it. I just thought I'd have it checked when I got a chance. Well, today, all this stuff starts fritzing out, and sometimes when it dies, it throws this security thing, as if there's something wrong with the security system, or I'm trying to hotwire it or something, right? So it starts dying more and more often. So we're kind of limping it along. I managed to get it started up each time. I send the kids in to play on the play area, and I've been out here for the past 2 hours furiously Googling and calling and trying to figure out what's going on. And everybody's like, well, the security system, the Stabilitrak, that shouldn't kill the engine. And so I'm digging around. I take the ABS fuse out thinking, what if I disable the Stabilitrak entirely? Problem's still there. So then I start realizing, wait a minute, Stabilitrak's not what's doing this. That goofy light coming on is just a dumb electronic side effect, because we got way too many electronic security measures, I think, in some of these cars now. So ABS is off, traction control's off, Stabilitrak's off. I started off and I'm running it, and of course the air lights are coming on, but it's still having the problem. Those lights aren't coming on, but it's still dying. Then it's dying more and more and more. Eventually, it gets to where it's dying parked. I'm not even driving, because I thought maybe it's a brake sensor, right? Maybe that's causing it to kill, or maybe it has to do with acceleration. Because the engine, when it was running fine. It didn't sound like an engine that had a problem. It sounded like an engine that was being turned off. I wish I had done a video earlier when it was shutting off so I could show you guys, but it wasn't running ratty when it was running. It would be running, and then it would stall and or die. Finally, I start thinking, okay, wait a minute, maybe it's the ignition. So I'm seeing these different threads on these forums and different conversations. So I start looking for the ignition relay. Then finally, it's getting worse and worse, and it's dying worse and worse, and it throws a code that it hadn't thrown before. I think it was a 2510, but it was like an ECM code. And it wasn't throwing this code before. So apparently, as this got worse, it finally threw the code along with all the other stuff that it had been doing. So I start looking up this code, and it's talking about the ECM and the ignition. So I'm digging into that, thinking maybe if I find an auto parts store, maybe I got a relay going bad, because it could be an ignition relay or an ECM relay. I'm not great on all the complex electronics of this stuff, but I do have a basic understanding of electronics, right? So then I get out of the car, I start it up, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I gotta find this relay. I fire it up, and I'm like saying a prayer, right? And I hear this, and I'm like, that sounds familiar, because I work with electrical stuff quite a bit. That sounds like a wire sparking. I heard sparks. You remember the sound of the engine. And so I pop the hood, I turn it on, and lo and behold, down by the alternator, there's this spark, and it's on and off. It's intermittent. It's not a solid short. It's a boop, boop, boop. And I realize this is coinciding with this engine dying, okay? So I come to find out that a wire that had been run to power the Kennedy lift pumps that we installed on here, we had these installed, and they ran a wire, and let me show you what happened here. This wire was run, and I'm gonna actually pull it out here so you can see it had been hanging down. It wasn't clipped up properly, and this is just the little 12-volt wire, and it was hitting the alternator or something down there, and the vibration of the van would, and so if I actually hit it, it'll spark, but I'm not gonna do it because I don't want to, like, you know, cause more problems. Don't want to needlessly short out, but every time this hit, it would spark, right? And I pulled it up. I'm gonna wrap it, of course, and I'm gonna put it up properly, but I finally found it. I actually did a video of it trying to see where it was, because I couldn't tell exactly where to spark. And then I realized, I start tracing wires. I'd had my fuse panel moved out of the way, the cover for it, and I pull this wire, and there it is, and it's all worn down. So what was happening is, it was basically a mechanic can explain this better, but it was causing some sort of an ignition fault or error when that was shorting out. And it was gradually getting worse because the wire was grinding down more and more and more. And so at first it was just occasionally bumping, and it was triggering the Stabilitrak code, right? Then it started bumping it more, and it was killing the engine. Then it got to where it was so bad that the engine would just die like all the time. It was always stalling and getting worse and worse, even though like in my head, the sound of the engine, I'm like, the engine sounds fine, it's running fine. This is not a mechanical issue, this is something else. And you know what? I think we got it, because it seems to be running like a champ. I drove it around, we'll see how it goes. But if you guys are seeing this video posted as it is right now, it's probably because this worked. And something, and this is a thread I saw once I started realizing maybe this isn't Stabilitrak, right? I have no idea why they have it set up to throw codes for Stabilitrak, because all it does is send you down a rat hole. I didn't need to be looking at wheel sensors. I didn't need to be looking at Stabilitrak or ABS or pulling ABS fuses. I needed to be looking at electrical here. It was an electrical fault killing the engine, okay? So because they designed it that way, I was looking in the wrong place. And as I'm reading these forum threads, and they're saying, well, check your negative battery terminal, right? Make sure you got a good ground. If you got an intermittent ground, it could cause some kind of ignition problem. And so I started shifting. I started ignoring what that light had told me, because even when I pulled the ABS fuse to disable all that stuff, it was still doing it. So I started ignoring what the light on the dash was telling me, and I just started searching, Googling, and thinking it through, and found not a bad ground, but a wire shorting against the frame or the ground, causing it to fault out and causing it to die, and now it's running just fine. So if you guys find yourself in a similar situation, it may not always be as easy as this. It may be a relay, it may be something else, but check those grounds, check for something, a wire that may have come loose and is shorting out, because I'll tell you what, it didn't like it. And that wire was just going to a booster fuel pump. That wire was not integrated into the engine itself. It had nothing to do with the ECM or the control modules. Just the fact that there was that short happening was enough to do it. And let me tell you something else. Let me check something here. There we go. All right, yeah, everything seems to be looking good. No check engine lights, no nothing now. I put it all back. So, all right, guys, I just wanted to document this for my own purposes, and in case maybe you're having the same issue, stranded in a parking lot somewhere, and maybe it's an easy fix like it was on here. Maybe you just have a little short somewhere, a wire come loose, or a ground or something like that. So that's what I found out, and it had nothing to do with the Stabilitrak. Chevy, come on. Quit throwing lights that have nothing to do with the problem. A short somewhere else in the engine compartment should not be throwing traction, Stabilitrak, and security codes to send us in the wrong direction. All right, guys, have a good day.